This is Dr. David Pomeroy, your host on ADHD Focus. I wanted to remind you that the show is not intended to be a recommendation for diagnosis or treatment of any condition for any specific person. Please consult your mental health professional or doctor managing your ADHD or mental health issues about any diagnosis or treatment-related information that you hear on the show. Refer your ADHD provider to the show if he or she would like more information. Thank you. Hello, this is your host of ADHD Focus, Dr. David Pomeroy, and today we'll be talking with Rick Green, the creator and brains behind TotallyADD.com, about some of the common problems and challenges that people with ADHD face in all kinds of daily activities. So, Rick, good to have you on the program.
Good to see you, or talk to you, and hopefully we're going to see you because we're going to be over in your neck of the woods in the next month or so. So we're afterwards we'll talk about actually getting together, and you can buy me lunch and buy Ava and I dinner, and it'll be great.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
So one of the main things that people with ADHD struggle with, and I have to admit, I think if someone said it's not a problem, I have to wonder whether they actually have ADHD, and that is procrastination and putting things off, having a hard time getting started.
Yeah, it's everywhere, and it's not just with ADHD, but I think it's especially prevalent with ADHD. The challenges, the things that drive procrastination for most people, and there are many reasons why we procrastinate. It's not one simple explanation. There's emotional issues, there's intellectual issues, there's sort of just, I actually don't know what I need, what information I need, or whatever it is. But I think it becomes overwhelming for us, and that's certainly when we can be incredibly productive, but when we're fiddling away on small things and getting them done and not tackling the main things that really matter to us or that we've promised or that are important, we feel like we're procrastinating, and we're procrastinating on specific things. And people say, I just sat and watched TV all day. Well, that's what you did. You didn't procrastinate on watching TV. So we are
that was
doing
your
something.
Choice.
Yeah, well, or it's there's that great phrase that Dr. Russell Ramsey had, which was that I know what to do and I still don't do it, and that's the frustration.
Yeah, and certainly the other aspect is if you really aren't interested in it, or it's taxes, and I don't know too many people interested in that, then it's easy to put it off because, I've got to get some things done, but I really want to figure out what I want to buy next on Amazon or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that it's easy to go, there's urgent, like my mom just called and I got to call mom back right now or whatever. And so often what we want to do in life doesn't have a schedule. So, I mean, I got into this because we made a documentary about ADHD, ADD and Loving It, and ADD and Loving It ran on PBS. It's still running on PBS, but it's available in our shop. It's been seen by millions of people, and because it was originally broadcast on television, we had a date we had to deliver. It was very easy to stay on track. We also had a budget. Now, the thing was, I wasn't in charge of the budget, and there was a production manager who handled the scheduling, and I had a co-producer, my wife, Ava, who kept things moving forward, which freed me up. So I was lucky there. And then when that aired, and it was hailed as this one-of-a-kind, unique thing, the immediate reaction was, could you give us another one just like it? And of course, that's when we came up with Mastering It, ADD and Mastering It, which then debuted on PBS. And that was really the issue for people is, the first program was, I had no idea. Thank you. I get it now. This is what's going on. But then the question from so many people, myself included, when I was diagnosed at age 47 was, okay, what do I do about it? And because you've got ADHD, you want the answer now. You want it to be simple, and when it doesn't work out the first time, you just I give up, and it's so easy to be disheartened. So,
I think a lot of people also hope that medicine's going to fix it. Oh yeah, I can take one of those things, then great, everything will be fine.
Well, and it can transform things dramatically. But the phrase I've often used, and I used it in our big series on medication, which you've been such a fan of, the 5-part series on it. But the phrase is that it levels the playing field.
Right.
But now you've got a playing field where you've got to go play, and you've got to play to win the game, and you've got to know the rules of the game, and you've got to understand, and so on. So, but now you're not playing uphill, and it's disorienting when suddenly you can actually sit down and do your taxes and that was for me when I started medication, was the litmus test. I couldn't figure out, didn't seem to affect my creativity. I didn't notice any difference. I wasn't had clearer vision or something, or could hear pins dropping, but I sat and in one day got a year's worth of taxes done, which I'd not been able to do for a year and a quarter. So medication's great when it works, and then you've just leveled the playing field, and then the procrastination has to be dealt with. It doesn't give you any answers, So we can talk a bit about what gets in the way. There are a number of things that lead to procrastination. One is simply that the project is too big. That's making a television show. When I look at it now, to do another one every time when I'm starting, I'm left with this. This is going to be huge. So it seems big. They built ships, so at some point anything can be done and managed. And so managing but to the person, to you at that moment, it seems too big. And there's a couple of reasons. There's many reasons. One is you've tried before and it didn't work out. Another is that you're overly ambitious. I've had so many people say, I tried to write a novel and and I wrote it and it wasn't great. And it's like, yeah, that's because you have to rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. And even the best writers are rewrite. But people sometimes we can expect to be really good at things. So we're not necessarily good at realizing what we are good at or not. I think
also another thing is that we tend to look at the end goal. Oh, I want to finish my taxes. Instead of, well, I have to find the receipts and get the material. So all the little steps seem like, well, that falls out of mind, and it's this big thing of finish taxes or do the show or write the book instead of looking at small parts.
And if you do start looking at the small parts, then you feel overwhelmed, and there's so many, you can't even keep track of them, which is why, of course, people write down the steps, or they have a system and so on. But, we have trouble keeping the system in mind. How many times have I created organizational systems for myself? And sometimes they work for a while, and sometimes they haven't. And then the other thing that following a routine or doing any routine, even if it's something for the first time, say you are writing your first novel and you've read about the steps involved in writing your writing a novel, you're still now following a routine. It may be someone else's and you're adapting it, but we tend to live without routine. We shun routine. We find it restrictive. And what I've found, I don't want to get into solutions yet, but that is a big problem. And so and we'll talk about mindfulness and meditation, yoga and exercise and things that will help burn off some of that sometimes can be, for some people, as effective as medication or double the effectiveness of medication. And then there's the other thing. I think there's a big issue, which is it's so easy for us to be swamped by 1,000 small things we want to do. And I remember a couple of the experts that we've interviewed for all of the different videos that are in the shop now. I mean, we've interviewed 75 experts, including you, and for all of these different videos on all these different topics. And I remember one, I think it's Barbara Luther, the coach, talking about a woman she was coaching who wanted to have a family and kids and a husband and a house, and she was 25 or 30, and Barbara asked her, well, how do you intend to get there? What are you going to do? And she just, what do you mean?
Yeah.
The idea, and she was stunned. She had never considered that she was going to have to start taking steps today. If she wanted to get married, she was going to have to meet people. What does that mean? Well, either going online or talking to friends or putting the word out or whatever, right? So we don't have not only a daily routine, but often we don't have this looking to the long term to remind ourselves
of what we're aiming for.
Yeah, and so for me, it's been very often, like I think there's 20 videos in the shop, and there were many others that I started, and then they gradually got abandoned, and they may get done someday, but it was because at some point I went, this isn't really what we're about. What we're trying to do here is get people empowered and really understanding what they have, understanding how to deal with it, and creating solutions that work for them. And when I went to other things like the history of ADHD or the neurology, it's good to know some of that, but ultimately knowing that it's dopamine and norepinephrine and so on, and the science keeps finding new levels of it and so on. That's helpful, or it's interesting, and it may help you win an argument when someone's going, it doesn't exist, and you're able to name a couple of the genes that are involved.
Right.
But it's that long-term thing, and I think that's true of many people. If it wasn't true, people would be saving money. Everybody would be saving much more money, living within their means, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
And then,
one of the, I just want to bring up one particular set of people I see. For some reason, it tends to be boys. They're in 9th, 10th, 11th grade, and they're going to go to college, but they aren't turning in homework. They're flunking courses. They're ignoring it, and they just have this idea that it's going to happen, but they don't see the steps and realize, well, part of life is you have to jump through hoops you don't like, and they don't connect it.
Right, and they're another simple example, we've had many people come, interns from a local college television course have come, probably 7 or 8 over the last 5 or 6 years. One of them, Jimmy, stayed with us and has been our web guy and editor and done everything for many years. Other people came and went, and the impression they got was they were bored. One guy actually was tweeting as he was sitting in, supposedly working in the next room, was tweeting, boring. And it's like, we can see that. But anyway, there was this idea of, I hate this job. I want to be the producer, a director. Right. It's like, if you can't do this simple job, I'm not giving you a better job. Do you not get that? You've got to be the best at what you're doing to get promoted. And so, and of course, so many people, they have this idea they want to be in television especially, but show business, there's certain fields where people really want to be involved. And thanks to television, many people now, so many kids want to be a crime scene forensic investigator because they've seen what it's like on television and it looks cool, and it probably isn't really like that on television or in real life, but because there's paperwork, which they never show on television and all the rest of it. Anyway, so I think that long-term thing of getting there, that's why coaching can be so valuable, and breaking something down, into separate elements and step by step. What do I need to get there? And then, of course, the challenge with then comes that other one, which is that there are so many ways to make lists, to follow. There's so many apps out there and ways to keep track of things. And I realized we had 2 calendars going, calendars on our cell phones. I had one, and I had a dozen lists on my computer of different aspects. It was madness. And so one of the key messages, there's in ADD and Mastering It, in the video, there are 36 different tools and strategies that Patrick and I use, and one of the simplest ones is only one schedule. It's simple to say, but it's really hard to do. One calendar, everything goes on the calendar. And Patrick introduced me to that because they had struggled with it, and when they really focused on it, and it's, stuff gets left off all the time, but that said, what
apps or setup have you found, or Patrick found, to be most helpful? Because there's certainly a gazillion calendars, and trying to sync them up can be a challenge.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing is to make sure that everybody who needs to be inputting stuff has access to my calendar as well. So my wife Ava does, the kids, if they need to send me, and Jimmy is able to throw stuff on there. Our business coach and ADHD, our coach basically, both of them they're friends who coach us, and they are able to go in there and so on. So there are a lot of systems out there. The trick is to have one, and it is really to use it faithfully. At that moment, and my brother older brother is so successful in business, and the reason, and one of the things he does, there's many reasons, but one of the things he does is, all right, we should get together for lunch next month. Okay, when? And he gets this thing out, and he puts in the date and the time, and bang, an instant later. And I'm, we'll go home, we'll look at the calendar, and we'll call you, and we'll send out an email and figure out something, and we never do. And a month goes by, 2 months go by. So it's that immediate thing of, this is another aspect of it. Yeah, this is an aspect of ADHD I think we all struggle with. We do something that doesn't work, and yet we live in this belief that somehow, someday, if I just try a little harder, it's going to work. Rather than go, so I would make every day a list of 30 things to do. And I never got, or rarely got, to the important things. And yet every day I'd say, okay, and finally I said, I'm going to make a shorter list. And it was 20 things, and then it was 10. And now I've learned some days I put down 2 things I'm going to do. Yeah. And I have to fight this feeling of, well, that's a waste of a day. No. If you got these 2 things done, you'd feel great. And you feel like they're going to take the whole day, maybe 2 or 3 days. And what about these other things? But when I focus and get them done, it's like, oh my God, I did that in 45 minutes.
Yeah,
or even if it is 4 hours, it's like the relief. And then I can then I go and look at the list, the master list, and go, well, now I can do 18 more things today, quick things. Call Dave, line this up, check out this, and so on.
One of the things that I've found helpful that I learned in a kind of time management for time-challenged people was in terms of kind of getting that list of 30 things. Well, where do you start? Is called a focus map, where you have a center box, and that's your topic. Say it's vacation. And then you have 4 boxes around that. You only get to have 4, and one of them may be how you're going to get there, where are we going to go, packing clothes, packing recreational stuff. And then you just list out on bars coming out from each of those boxes, what are you going to do? And if one box has, packing clothes, has all kinds of places, well, that becomes its own center box in a different map. So then you've got this list kind of exploded, and you can say, well, we have to figure out where we're going to go before we figure out how we're going to get there. So you can kind of prioritize it.
It's brilliant. And there's mind mapping. There's these great tools that are like that, and they are really good. And it's kind of how we think anyway. It's a great way to manage a big project. And that big project could, as you say, just being getting to the cottage every weekend. And what we started to do, and this is brilliant, is, and again, this is mentioned in Mastering It, but we talk in ADD and Mastering It, we talk about making lists and using them. And just in the last year, we finally started making a list for when we're going to the cottage or on a vacation. And that list is, cancel the newspaper, turn off the modem, and set the timers on the lights. There's a whole section. There's a whole section of clothing, shirts, pants, underwear, whatever. And then there's a whole section of who to contact, let the neighbors know. There's a whole section of camera. If we're working, are we bringing cameras, lights, audio equipment, and so on. And so if we're just going on a vacation where we're not doing some shooting, then bang, that whole thing just gets checked off.
Right.
But there is this checklist, and what has been great was when we finish the checklist, and if we're on vacation and something gets missed, I make a note of it, and it gets added to that checklist, which has
for the next time.
Started out as probably 30 items, and it's now probably up to 60 because there are so many possible little things. Oh, we forgot. It's just like I wrote phones. Well, phones, chargers, and make sure you've got the cable, right? So it's all of these little steps. And then I print the checklist off. I made it bright colored, and it goes on a clipboard, sits right beside on a table in the living room. And as we gather stuff that we're taking along, or we're bringing so we're going to the cottage, we're bringing the bags of potato chips or the homemade this, or whatever it is we're bringing, it starts piling up there. And
one other thing that may, given the fact that those of us with ADHD have a hard time figuring out how long it's going to take, is if you, as you're going along, see, boy, this took longer than I expected, whatever it was on the list, you could jot down, this is going to take me half an hour, this is 5 minutes. So again, you have some perspective of, we're not going to be able to do this the night before.
Exactly. Well, I was actually writing a blog, and I started it about an hour before this call, and I knew going in, I started to rush, and then I went, this is not a 45-minute job. This is going to take longer than that. Get as much done as you can. I set a timer beside me. It went off. I switched the timer off. I continued for another 5 minutes, and then went, there's a real danger that I switch it off, and I would have kept going, and you wonder where I was, right? But I stopped. I went over and got online to prepare for this. So I'll go back to it later, and that's a really difficult thing for me to do, and I think for a lot of people is this feeling of I'll come back to it, because our working memory is so bad. We have this experience of finding a project we started, for me, whole ideas that I developed and made a sample footage of, and then it just fell by the wayside because I got involved in so many other things. And that's a real challenge, is allowing yourself to start something knowing you won't finish it all today. Because if you wait until I'll have 2 days in a row free, you will never have 2 days in a row free. You just won't. And
how do you remind yourself that there's that project you didn't finish?
Because I use an online program called Trello, which is kind of like a bulletin board, but it's online, and it works really well, because when I started out doing television and doing skit comedy on radio and television, we had 3x5 cards for every single skit, and it showed who was in it and how long the skit was going to run and whether it was a song or a skit or a little blackout or whatever. And since then, every project, and what's nice in Trello is you can put checklists and many other things. Every time you click on a card and flip it over, you can fill in all kinds of information. So that's, for that kind of thing, really helpful. For finishing the blogs, it's just a matter of I've left it up on my screen. It's there, and I'm pretty sure I know I'll come back to it, because I know that Jimmy is waiting for the blog so he can upload it onto the website, so it's there for Thursday morning, and so on. So there. Part of it is really, and also working with, these are a lot of systems, but also working with a coach who makes sure I'm not pursuing 115 ideas, because I've got 115,000 ideas, right? And even if I chase down just a fraction of them, I'll never get anything finished, because it's way more fun to start something new. So having a short list and getting something done, and then when it's done, the other thing I've learned to do is to reward myself.
Yes.
Some chocolate, get up and dance, go watch a program I really wanted to see, just even get kudos from Ava or myself or whatever. But it's been said we are reward deficient sometimes. People with ADHD often, they don't. It's not enough to have a friendly game of cards. They've got to go out and gamble their life savings at a casino to wake up the brain.
To get that. And the reward has to be immediate, directly in time related. So with kids, if parents say, if you get good reports all week, then you can have ice cream on Saturday. Well, Saturday might as well be 2 years from now. But if you get one today, then we'll go for a walk, or you get to go over to someone's house, whatever the reward for that kid is. So the tie-in is right exactly at the time.
And it's so important at that moment, whether it's your kid or your spouse or you, to, when it's done, before the ice cream, is to go, wow, awesome job, you did this. And to acknowledge, because our own belief, and it's based on a lot of bad experiences, that we are unreliable, that we don't finish things, that we don't have stamina. And it's true, we don't have a lot of stamina for certain things, and for other things, when we're interested, we have stamina. That everybody has their hobby or their whatever it is, that they can, when it's something that interests us, we are there, and we can go forever sometimes, or unfortunately go until we suddenly hit a wall, and then we're flattened. And unfortunately, so often when we're pursuing something, so if I'm writing a blog and it's going well, and then I suddenly get stuck, and I've stopped, that's the wrong time to take a break, because at that point I've stopped and I've walked away, and when I come back and open it up, it's like, oh yeah. Whereas if I and this is hard to do, but I think this is true with anything. I'm writing the blog and I know I've got to take a break, and then I suddenly come up, I've got a great gag here and an idea, and that actually leads to a whole thing. This is going to be good. Stop now. And just make enough of a note to remind yourself and go off. Because when you come back again later to sit down again and you open up the document, this is great, and bang, you're off to the races.
Right.
And so I've found that so often with a project that I've got ideas for, or a blog or anything that I'm working on, even planning a vacation, if I start a document, if I say, I don't think I can write a blog right now, there's so much to do, but I've had this idea, I want to blog about the idea of only using one calendar, say, or whatever it would be.
Right.
And then, so I'll start the document with a title that's going to remember, only one calendar. I will be able to find it. I put in a bunch of words so that if I forget the title, I can at least search it and find the document. And then I just throw down 1, 5, 10 lines. What happens sometimes is that that's enough, and when I come back later and open it, it's like, look at all these ideas. Yeah, it's like, there's a whole bunch of thoughts. And stuff I would have forgotten. And the other thing that can happen, though, Dave, is that sometimes I'll sit down, I'll just write a bit. I don't think I have the stamina to write it all. And once I start putting down those ideas, they lead to another and another and another. And then suddenly I am writing. And then it spins off, and I suddenly have 3 blogs that are well on their way because one cleaves off into a whole separate topic.
One of the things that I hadn't realized, I don't know how many years I've been using Outlook, and then I read something that, you can drag an email into the calendar. Imagine that. So I'd get an email, it would be about something coming up, and do exactly that, because when you do that, you actually get a little space on top of the email you just got. I could put down beginning ideas for a talk I was going to give. So then when I came up to it again, I've already got these ideas, instead of thinking, I had some good ideas for that, and you run into the block.
Absolutely. And so often we forget that we started a document. So if this was actually, I wouldn't say it was a short notice, but we talked about it and you said, let's do it in a few weeks, and here we are. But sometimes I'm giving a talk in December for many months away, and just confirmed that today. So I started a document and I threw in a bunch of ideas. And the danger for me is that I'll go, it comes October, November, and I'll see it on the calendar, go, I should start a document and I'll forget I've actually started a document. So it's really important to, whether you're a writer like me or whatever it is you do, to be able to organize your stuff and label it and so on, so you can find it. Otherwise, you just keep reinventing the wheel.
I like the idea of putting in some of the words that are tags so you can find it later.
Absolutely.
You may not remember the title, but there's something you can locate it with.
Yeah, and it's so, if you're working with your hands, say you're creating something, crafts, or I don't know whatever it is you're doing, handmade things, have your materials labeled. You don't want regimented time and regimented thinking, but if you're making beautiful beadwork, you want to know where the red beads are. You don't want to have to, every time you change color, have to try and figure out where the red beads are. And you want structure. And that's another thing that I really think we fight against, and it's a huge mistake. But you want structure for the stupid, dumb, simple stuff. You want to know the rules. If you're a painter, you want to know that if I mix blue and yellow, I'm going to get green. That's a simple thing. You want to know that, and it doesn't limit your creativity to know that. No, I don't want to. I want to break all the rules. No. You want to understand this, because whatever it is you're trying to really create, if you're a writer, you're using the same words everybody else is using. There's a lot of them around, but ultimately, it's not like you've invented language or you've invented the book.
It's how you put them together.
Exactly, and understanding chapters and understanding all these things. And what I think for so many of us, we want to be creative, and we're afraid that if we read, if we're a musician, if you're a musician, I just want to create my own thing, you won't listen to anyone else. The greatest musicians and the great composers and, from the Beatles on back, they listened to everybody. The Beatles, early on when they were teens, they were grabbing every album, bluegrass, whatever came from across
America.
A
lot of classical music that's integrated into the Beatles stuff as ideas, or actually the background is a section of violins or an orchestra.
Absolutely.
So they pick up a lot of things. Well, we're coming up to summation time, and I think we've looked at a number of the different topics and challenges that people with ADHD face, kind of woven together around this central thing of procrastination, which is even figuring out, okay, how am I going to deal with that? Seems overwhelming.
Well, and
these little pieces.
I think it's part of it is when it is overwhelming, you just break it down. So if I was overwhelmed by the idea of writing a book because there's many steps, what I could start with is just a document that has a title or at least 5 ideas about this is going to be a book about ADHD symptoms and and so on. Lay that out. I start with that. If that seems too much, then it's okay. Even that's too much. Chunk that up. First, I'm going to create a document. My new book. That's easy enough to do. And so you take, you don't go on, as somebody who famously said, you don't go start your vacation only once every light between you and wherever you're going has turned green. You drive along, and when you hit a red light, you deal with that, and so on. And so the same with steps. And I think that is a huge one, is just breaking things down into doable steps. And then making sure you remember where you were or where you left off.
And the Chinese saying, a journey of 10,000 miles begins with the first step.
Yeah,
you have to put on your shoes and then walk out the door.
And and then if you end up noticing later, gee, I started this book and never finished it, guess what? It probably didn't mean that much to you. And I've had to deal with that myself, is to go, rather than go, oh, I've never finished these screenplays. Once I got diagnosed, I went, I'm never going to finish these screenplays. They take 6 months to write one. Forget it.
Well, speaking of finishing, we've kind of run out of our time, so we can finish up. I'm sure we'll have a chance, Rick, to carry on the conversation on other shows. My guest today has been Rick Green of TotallyADD.com, and one of the shows of kind of documentaries which Rick and his support team have come up with is ADHD and Mastering It. ADD and Mastering It, which has a lot of the things we've talked about today in it, and I think anybody will find that very helpful. If you have ADHD, there are things you can use. If you're a person who knows someone with ADHD, you can pass along the tips or turn it on and say, we're going to watch a show.
Exactly. So, and it's nice. It's on PBS now and then, but it's in our shop, and it's at Totally ADD, and it is it's a funny video too, from beginning to end. So great.
Well, thanks very much, Rick, for being on the show. We'll look forward to another time. And you've been listening, folks, to ADHD Focus, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time around.